this group hasn't worked well. I wasn't getting that. Hello. This is.
I mean, if Pete's in the front row, can you not read it?
Yeah. You know, the problem we want to do.
You're not sitting in the front row.
Yeah.
Somebody else.
Yeah. I mean,
So are we going to like go through line by line?
almost. Well, only 20 of them. Yeah. Yeah.
Is this on, we can all log into that thing
Yes.
and then we can see this.
That's something I will be proposing.
Stress test for meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll all be on meeting on this.
If you do, be sure to mute, because we really don't want the audio from the meeting coming out in the meeting room.
Yeah, that's true. But I think there are two people here who already seen.
Okay, this was still missing quite a few.
Just I can't connect to either. Like no modern browser accepts the certificate from the server anymore.
Oh, really?
It's
Okay.
neither Chrome nor Firefox. They both reject the SSL certificate.
For whom?
Gita.pet.tools.it. I will take them separately.
Okay. They can set. Yeah, there's a few persons missing also. Let's see.
Spoke to Colin, they come on and he's here. He wasn't sure what it.
Okay. Yeah. It's definitely something we'll need a few eyeballs on this. Yeah. Okay. So welcome everyone. Nice work group session here at IETF 99. So user coach and Peter Thatcher could not come in person here today, but we have Lenny covering from the note hasn't updated for this IETF, but I guess you have seen it quite a few times, so you know what it's all about. If you don't know, please read it and act accordingly.
Microsoft.
It's
Or you go without getting into the figures, so.
no. Okay. I'll on this one. Okay, we'll be passing the blue sheet. Can you fill those? Passing the blue sheets in a minute. Jonathan volunteers at JavaScript, thank you, and Niels will be taking notes. And as usual, when you speak and comment, please use the microphone, and please state your name for the notes. Our agenda for today is going to be a very short introduction and status update, and the rest of the meeting, finalize ISPs, whatever it takes. So as you all know, we've been working on this particular item for quite some time.
The doors are now locked.
Okay. Yeah, so the door is enter only for the next 2 hours. Yeah, so this is definitely something what we do want to finish now, our last remaining work group item. And yeah, we have a proposal that we think could be working to get the final issues cleared. Looking forward to your feedback on that, and then let's do what it takes. Any comments or questions on the agenda? Okay, working group status. Dual-stack fairness, it's been quite some time already with RC editor. It is waiting for ISPs, which is one of the reasons why we want to get ISPs done. Trickle Eyes, just recently, working group last call ended. We got a few comments on them. We got an updated version. There's one outstanding comment on the mailing list, but it seems at least 1+1 was got it, so it seems a reasonable change. Please check out the email on that on the mailing list and comment if there's any issues. Otherwise, we'll be requesting publication for Trickle Eyes shortly. And ISPs, we will working group last call after next update. So let's make sure all the things we care about are in the version that's going to be published after this meeting. So the idea for finalizing ICE, there was a very thorough review and quite a substantial PR from Peter Thatcher, which is on the URL you can see on the page there. It was mostly editorial, so it did not actually change the behavior of ICE. But since there were substantial editorial changes, we want to make sure those changes did not do any unintentional changes on the behavior. So that's why the plan for today is to review the key parts of that PR. The PR is hundreds of lines of code, hundreds of lines of text, but I did mark 20-something parts that are maybe a bit more substantial, and the idea is to go through one by one, get your feedback. Okay, does this look okay? Can we go forward with this? Have it merged and get this thing published. And then please let us know if there's any other issues that are not in the current PR. There's a few editorial fixes that were discussed on the email list on the next following slides, but this is the plan for today. Any questions or comments on the plan? Okay, so I guess we're gonna go forward with the first few issues. Crystal will be presenting those, and then we go with the PR. Meanwhile, please open your laptop, go to the URL you see on that page, on that slide. It's in the ICE working group 5045bis GitHub. It's the pull request 38. We will be reviewing that change by change, so especially you in the back may not be able to see all the text in the PR. Those who want to be actively contributing on this session, please come to the front. It's probably easier if you do see the text on the slides and on screen. Okay, with that, Christer.
Yes. Back in April, I sent an email to the list, and I had gone through all these different kind of states and different kind of properties we have in ICE. There's a lot of them. You have different state machines, and in addition to that, you have properties and so on and so on. And I was basically wondering whether we really need all of that. There were some feedback about that. No, we could change and change. However, doing some of those changes would require quite a bit of editorial rework, and since nothing was really broken, the approach is really not to do that, because it would be a kind of optimization, but it wouldn't really. It's too late for that. The ones that you see here on the slide are things which are defined in the draft, but at least when I've been looking through, it seems like it's not really used anywhere. So I'm going to focus on that. For example, first we have the ICE state, the state of ICE itself. We have running, completed, and fail. And my question really here is that, do we really need this? What is this state machine used for? I mean, because, for example, if ICE fails, why should you maintain it in a state machine fail? I mean, you're just going to quit doing ICE. And I didn't really see any other usage of this ICE state. So my suggestion was, do we really need it for anything?
Yeah, Martin Thompson, I'm okay with this. I mean, you're either doing ICE or you've done ICE, and it either succeeds or fails. That there is these states that might need to be exposed in APIs. For instance, the WebRTC one is probably a question that they can resolve more than anything else. I do think the other states are like things like frozen is kind of core to the whole thing, don't you?
Yeah, I'll come back to this. One thing I forgot to mention regarding this ICE state also, we had a PR where we actually define ICE session. So now we have a clear definition of what an ICE session is, so we know when it starts and when it ends. So I think that further removes the need for actually having this ICE state, because we know when it starts and how long it goes on.
Jonathan Lennox. What I recall, and I've been confessing not having read the latest version of BIS, but in 5245 there were certainly normative behavior is just if something happens when ICE is still running, you do this. If it's after it's completed, it's done that. I mean, I don't know whether that needs to be explicit state or not, but that's sort of, if that's gone, that's fine. But if, I think being able to say, this is when it goes from running to done is probably useful.
Sure, but I mean, if you think there could be something, we don't need to decide it. No, we go back and look at it. I mean, we don't, let's not, it's, and again, if we can keep it, nothing's broken.
I'm just remembering, do we have normative text on that? I think still.
But we can look into that.
Like, I think what it was is like when you're running, you don't send remote candidates, but when you're completed, you do, or something like that. I don't remember. It's been a while.
Okay. Yeah.
Colin Jennings. All the implementations I know of whether it's old ICE, new ICE, whatever, have this state variable that they reflect up to higher level protocols that has sort of these states in it. And so if you remove this and suddenly it becomes no longer defined in the spec what the state means or how the implementations are supposed to set it or whatever, and it makes it much harder for people. I mean, should the implementations remove reflecting the state out to other applications or something? It makes it a much more difficult backwards compatible plugin at a software level if you remove this state variable. And I imagine there's lots of other specifications that use the value of this state to report in statistics and diagnostics information.
Sure. So, I mean, let's keep it. And we have more important things than to.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. Just to Fluffy's point, I mean, it's not like you can remove the states from your code as a result of this change. Never mind.
I don't know. So anyway, so can we get into the minutes so we have it documented? The other thing was, and for the checklists, there are actually two things. We have a checklist state with the running, completed, fail, and this is something that we do need. I'm not suggesting that we're going to remove that, but we also have something which is checklist status, which is not a state. It's a separate, attribute, frozen and active, whether a checklist is frozen or active. And there is a definition what those mean, but I couldn't find, again, any procedures in the spec actually using this information for anything. So if you're aware of anything, then...
So, Martin Thompson, are you suggesting that we merge the two states into one where we have frozen action complete?
Well, basically, either that or we just remove this frozen and active and just keep the state machine.
So the
running complete fails.
My understanding is that we don't need the checklist status because of the way that we've changed this in support of Trickle.
I was just it's on my. I was just about to say that I'm pretty sure in our implementation, frozen is basically a state before running. So, and then there's no active. It's like you go from frozen and then everything else is active basically.
John, thanks. Yeah, I think there used to be, I mean, I agree they could have been one set of states, but I also think that the way we changed the unfreezing algorithm, checklists are no longer frozen. It's just that candidate pairs are frozen.
Exactly, that's part of this Emil's
yeah, so
table.
with these Emil changes, I don't think there's any concept of a checklist status of frozen anymore. So that can go away, I think. But we need to, pending double checking, I think that can go away now.
Sure. So I think we take the approach to remove it. Obviously, we'll truthfully check that we don't break anything. But again, when I did a search for this in the draft, the only thing I could find is where we define what it means, but nowhere else could I find any, what it's used for. So.
Yeah, I want to further add to this that if we keep that definition, we also keep some confusion, and removing it should help at least a little bit. There will always be the confusion that people have between 5245 and 5245 biz where frozen has been moved, but let's at least remove one.
Yeah, and that's actually a background of this, because when we read, when you read a spec, maybe it's not confusing. Most of the background is from feedback coming from the people actually implementing this. For example, Taylor and Peter and Niels and these people. This is confusing. What do we need this for? I mean, so that's why I'm trying to clean up. Okay. Yeah, this is something which came up. Peter sent an email also to the list. When you at some point you calculate this priority for your candidate pairs, And the spec says that they have to be unique, but there is no scope. What does this uniqueness mean? And this is something which comes up very often. It's something that, for example, ISG or IETF last call is going to comment on. So we thought it's, and actually here I talked about the candidate pairs, but what we forgot to put here is that there is also this thing called local preference, which is also said to be unique, but we also need to define what that uniqueness means. But I think it could be basically the same thing. I think the suggestion that we've had, or my understanding of it, is that the uniqueness would be within one checklist for one media stream. So, for example, you have audio and video; those are two different video streams. It's okay to have the same priority values overlapping in those because you're going to treat them differently anyway. And this would this would be during the ICE session. So, for example, if you do an ICE restart, you will recalculate everything. So it doesn't matter if you get the same value as you had previously. So.
John Flags, I agree. And I think that actually, if you look at the, again, I don't know how much of this you've kept, but 5245's, default ways of calculating priorities, they are implicitly unique to within one checklist only. Yeah, with a slight weirdness for components. For some reason, they're not. They makes them be different depending on which component you're in. But I'm not sure that actually matters.
Yes, and also what Peter asked was whether we need to say something about components, but I don't think we do because each component is a different candidate, and the fact that they all have to be unique covers components also, so we don't need to say anything about that. Okay. Was that it? Yeah, I think one more thing. We don't have a slide on that, and I think it's more editorial, but I want to bring it up anyway just to make sure because I think it's important. We did add some time ago. We have text now saying that before. I mean, this was regarding this removal of aggressive and everything. But what we now say is that until you do nomination, you can send media on any candidate pair. I mean, that's something we agreed on. And once you've done the nomination, you only use that pair to send media. What I think it was Peter said, that the spec is a little unclear. It now, the way he reads it, that means that you need to use this nomination for the whole session. He wanted a clarification saying, sure, you can do renomination, and then you will end up using another pair. So that's just adding one or two sentences to clarify that. If you do a renomination, you don't need to do an ICE restart in order to do a renomination. You can renominate during the ICE session.
It's Omar. On the same topic, do we have any text which basically says what to do with the candidate pairs which you, like after you nominated? I vaguely remember that I was like going through that and I didn't find anything, and it seems there are like implementations which basically drop anything after they're nominated, and there are like other implementations which keep that stuff around. And like another interesting question is what, like, do you keep, for example, consent running on these in case you want to switch, in case you want to renominate?
Consent is, of course, if you talk about this continuous consent, that's of course out of scope of this.
I know.
To answer your question, I don't think the draft says anything of what you do with the other candidates. For example, you must discard them or anything.
Or you must.
So maybe that's a further clarification. We should say that if you think, or if you want to be able to do a renomination at some point, you should keep them alive by sending this things. I'll look into that, but that's a good point.
Okay, excellent. We seem to have a functional mic now, it was in the front. So we'll have a closer look at that issue, but otherwise, I guess we have these now closed. We have a way forward. So next step would be to go some key parts of the massive PR. And as I said earlier, I recommend coming a few seats forward to actually be able to see the screen. Or at least open the pull request number 38 on your laptop and your browser, so you see what we're going through here. So There's as I mentioned in the beginning, there's a bunch of them. I did mark with IETF for IETF 99 session in the comments for those that I think were more substantial, that changed the text in a more than just subtle ways. But none of these are meant to impact behavior. It's also be at least, we're not changing any behavior, just making it more clear. The first one being there, the definition of selected pair and selected candidate. You can see the old version in the top and the new version in the bottom. And the key part there is now it says sending media instead of sending and receiving media. So that was the how we actually changed the behavior, what you can do with your valid candidates. Already much earlier, but seemed to be something that was left over here. But is this something that looks okay? And for all of this, I'd like to get a few nods in the audience. When you have read it, you think it makes sense, no comments. Okay, no nods.
John Lennox, I mean, undecided about this. I mean, certainly, I believe 5245 had normative behavior saying that you actually, especially that you should throw away media received on the non-nominated pair after nomination. And I believe that this was intended as, to some degree, a weak security measure before you had, if you didn't have proper, SRTP running, or, possibly a denial of service prevention. The question is, should you take any media regardless? Should you take any media from a known non-selected candidate? I think one of the goals here is to be able to latch on to the proper path and throw away anything that's, somebody spamming you from, just randomly probing ports from an unknown port.
That's true. I wonder, although, if this part has an actual impact on that. Now it says selected pair is the one that you use for sending, because I guess this implies that you.
Right. Yeah. I mean, clearly, if we say this isn't. I mean, this isn't the normative place that says it. But
yeah.
If we do say that, if we do still say that, and I don't remember, this description should reflect that. So maybe it could be clearer to say after nomination or whatever, but.
Yeah, so that's probably would be a different place, because this is only about the selected pair and selected candidate, only definition of that. And it used to be sending and receiving, but it can be in the beginning different also. You would be receiving.
But that's the beginning before you select.
Before you select it?
Sorry. Yeah, definitely. I mean, what we said is before selection, yes, you should receive on any pair which you've got a valid check. But after selection, I think the idea is you lock down. I don't know, I'll let other people talk to this.
I think this is the type of thing that's, like when I was reviewing it, it's really hard to decide if this is a normative change to the spec or not without going through the whole spec. You can't just read 10 lines here on a slide and decide what this means. It's really difficult. On this one, I looked at it and I thought, okay, when you're doing DTLS SRTP, I don't see any changes on this, which I think is probably what the people had in their mind when they were thinking about this. But if you're doing SDES, we have instances where we want to do a make before break connection, where we're handing something off from cellular Wi-Fi, like handing things off across networks, and we will start using a new transport when a previous one is currently working for us. Now, we may be in wild violation of the spec, but nonetheless, this is something that I thought was allowed on the old one.
Jonathan, yes, but that's a different ICE session, because you've done an ICE restart to do that, right?
No. If the ICE discovers I have connectivity 5 different ways, which one I actually send packets on should be my choice based on the cost of using that interface and the quality I get on the interface, and we monitor that and switch. And this looks like I can't switch anymore, maybe, but I can't tell.
I don't think you could ever switch. Once you selected, you were supposed to use that until you did an ICE restart.
As I said, we may have been in violation of the spec, but I don't think we were.
Christer, this is actually one of the things I mentioned during the slides, that that there had been a comment saying that we should make it clear that you can renominate during the session without doing an IS restart. If you think that's wrong, then we need to have a discussion about that. But regarding this specific text, I mean, I agree. This is something that for some reason I missed, and I'm a little concerned, because I think also once you've done the selection, you shouldn't be forced to being able to receive media on the other valid candidates. I mean, that's the reason why we do the selection, right? So now we know where we're going to send the media, and I think there is even text about that elsewhere in the document where we talked about. We added at some point a media handling section or something like that, which goes more into detail about that.
Okay, so it seems we need to have a closer look at the rest of the text before approving this one, or should we simply reject this change?
Well, I think rejecting this, if we have this much confusion about what the spec means, I think we need to do more than reject this change. We need to come to consensus on what it should mean and write it down explicitly. Yeah,
Yes,
and and so I mean, the other point I would make is that related to what Chris said, one of the points of selection is once you've done selection, once selection has happened, both sides are then entitled modulo, leaving the modulo packet reordering in the wire, to shut down all the non-selected candidates. And you want to be able to do that often very quickly, to stop using resources on the turn or turn off one of your radios or whatever. So, I mean, that's the point of selection, that you can turn everything else off.
Okay.
This is Ben. Can the action item you just wrote down have a name on it?
Sorry, Ben, I missed that.
Can the action item you're in the process of writing down have a name on it?
That's a very good idea. No, I mean, person to actually do the fix. So I guess, it's from Peter Thatcher, the pull request original. I don't see Peter remotely. Okay, Krister is going to take this together with Peter. And I'm going to, okay. Krister, yeah. And we need to speed up this.
I guess my question to the note taker is, did you have it clear in the notes what we thought the issues were? Okay.
Okay.
If you do, please tell us.
Okay, so this may take a bit longer than we expected, but the other ones hopefully are a bit faster. So this one, agent. Yeah, because the split view is. Can you guys read this?
It's fine. Move closer.
No, the problem is that the line wrapping is not happening.
Yeah.
That's right. Yes. That's editorial.
So yeah, I mean, all of these are editorial, except the previous one was supposed to be editorial, but it turned out to be a bit more. So this is about the text you still used to say you have a single turn relay, and now we're saying can be multiple. So all of this text goes away, but it's super hard to actually. So probably it's easier to open on your laptop and take the details there.
This is Ben. I'm happy to ask for the authors to just look at editorial stuff and make their own decision. I don't, unless there's things in there that you think have material impact on the spec.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the editors already did look at this. They look okay, but there's a risk, just like in the previous one, we thought it was completely editorial, but it turns out there are more implications. So there's about 200 other changes, which are okay, fine. These 20 were like, I think it makes sense if someone else has a look at this.
It might be helpful then to say why it's a when
Yeah.
people are looking at it on the screen here as a diff.
So all of them should have that comment.
Krista, this is actually the one comment I gave to Peter when I saw this PR. I said, you should give some explanation why you have done this and that. I mean, if it's just a spelling error, that's fine. But in this case, where there's a lot of text removed, I think there should be a little more, explanation exactly why it's done, because otherwise it's very difficult to find out why it's done. It may be easier for him because when he's doing this, he has the spec in front of him and he's reading it, but we are just seeing this.
True, and that's why I tried to comment on the some more substantial ones, like why I think this change was requested, and this was about the fact that now we can have okay. What is this? Sorry, we already done. True. So this actually changes the one up here. But no, it's the same change. It's the same change. There's no semantic difference here. Yeah, that's the one. True. Yeah, actually, sorry about that. It was the next one where the multiple turn servers. So this is the one I mentioned. So we are actually, this change is removing a lot of text. So how many of you had a chance to have a look at this before the session? Okay. Okay. So what's your reflection on this particular one?
I mean, my reflection on reading this whole thing, it was completely indecipherable, and I know that that's useless. Like, I feel like he went and did all this good work, and I should, I mean, all the editorial, like everything that's actually editorial and writing, it's like, is great. I'm sure, like, I have no complaints about what any authors do, but having these all mixed together like this, it's really hard to pull them apart and figure out what to do with them. So on every single one of them, I was like, everywhere that 20 lines of text was deleted, I was like, it's going to take me an hour to see what the impact of that 20 line of text delete. And by the way, I've always thought this document had way too much text and 2/3 of it should be deleted. So I should be doing a little dance that's finally happening, that someone's doing it. But in look like the previous one that we even discussed, it may be totally editorial. I'm not saying there's a problem with it. Even if it's not totally editorial, I'm 100% support it. But I'm not quite sure how we're going to review all of these and get them done, because each one of them would be better as each one of them is going to have first of all, if all the just purely obvious editorial things were completely separate, it would be less daunting, if nothing else.
True.
And then if each one of the other things was its own PR and we could evaluate and discuss in itself.
Peter needs better kid discipline.
So actually, this PR is already the improved one. This one, they used to have also technical changes here. Now they were removed. So this should be now purely editorial. And then I did another round where I tried to flag, okay, like trivial changes and the more substantial one. More substantial ones are the ones we're now going through. So we're not going to go through every change. But I do agree. It took me 2 afternoons to do your review.
And thank you. Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. I don't want to tell somebody like, I don't like your PR that probably grossly improves this document, right? And you put a huge amount of work into. But on the other hand, have I reviewed it and think it's okay? No. And that is not going to happen in the next 2 hours in this meeting or any other way. I mean, it's major.
How can we use these 2 hours the most productive way?
That's a great question.
Because this is the best plan we got. I mean, what we came up so far. But very open for. Yeah.
I
don't have a better plan, so yeah.
While I agree with Colin that this is like, I also gave up on reading through the whole thing. Just reading the specific paragraph we're looking at, it sounds to me it's just all justification of the should and like why turn servers are expensive. So that one seems okay to me to change to this one sentence.
This has been part of the reason I think we're doing this painful exercise in here is because it wasn't happening, right? We not only do we have a huge thing of a huge PR that's hard to go through, but we've got all sorts of people that are busy on everything and aren't having a lot of energy for this. So whatever it takes to get that energy going and just get this done. Everyone, remember that done is right, probably the most important bug in this right now is it's not done. But I'll push a little bit back on that last one. When you go through IESG review, and naked shoulds are often questioned. So even, and I'm not saying that every should have a long, detailed explanation of why it's there, but it's generally good to at least keep a sentence or two that says why you would not, when you might contemplate not following this should. Otherwise, you'll get a whole bunch of why isn't this a must questions in IESG review.
So maybe another question for consideration for the group. I haven't followed all the updates and changes that have been done to 52, 45 bits over the last, I don't know how many years at this point probably, but I think it's worthwhile considering, I mean, how comfortable are people putting in a bunch of editorial changes at this very late stage? I mean, how well motivated is it? Is it really necessary? Is it worth the risk? Do people actually want to do this? Is there a need for doing this?
It's Omer. I guess it depends on whether you want to have like new implementations on the market or not. Because quite honestly, like, I mean, reading ICE is like, without any code base, is like super confusing. The only reason I can make it through the thing is because I can compare like running code with the actual text, and I know it's like working code. So I think there is a need to clean it up. Yes.
And do you think that the changes that are being proposed here, that they achieve that goal?
As I said, I didn't read that one PR all the way to the end, but
the things that you've looked at, do you think?
Yeah, I think they're improving things. What I've seen so far, I haven't noticed anything which makes it worse.
Okay, so you think this is justified? We should definitely go ahead and review everything in here and make sure.
Yes, I think it would. If we only make the spec like 10% more comprehensible, I think that's a big improvement.
Okay.
Jonathan, he more or less said what I said, except that I understood it because I had seen Jonathan Rosenberg's presentations back when he was designing the thing.
Okay, good. And I could second that. I mean, I think we should keep the bar high for these late changes, but if someone is going to do a PR, I think it's pretty, then it makes it much easier for us to actually do the changes and everything. So those I would definitely consider. A random comment from the bushes saying, hey, please improve this, I would discard at this stage. Colin?
Sort of supporting that whole argument too. I think that if we do manage to make the document significantly simpler to understand and comprehend, our odds of getting reasonable real review on the real technical issues as we go through this of all the changes we've made over the past 4 years are much higher. So there might be some, even though we're going to do a bunch of pain and suffering to make it more comprehensible here, there may be some real good benefits of that too, maybe.
Okay, good points. Our way forward, shall we go to next issue, or do you think we have some better way of tackling this?
Nobody's proposed one yet.
Okay, so we keep on continuing until we come up with a better proposal. And here I did note that, okay, the naked could be questioned, so it's probably good to give some sort of justification for that should.
Briefer and more accurate.
Yeah. Okay. Next issue. Okay, so this was just about the fact that earlier there was a bunch of text saying, okay, you would be only using single turn server, and that was removed.
Did we reach a conclusion on the previous one, or were you going back to that one afterwards?
I think the conclusion that it needs a bit more.
It took as a note to explain why they should.
Yeah.
Okay.
But in a shorter way than these like
Than this.
8 sentences there.
Exactly. Okay, so I guess this change was relatively straightforward. Okay, multiple turn servers are fine. That's part of the spec now. But then again, I'll give you 30 seconds to read it through.
I'm okay.
Krister says it's okay.
Compare the screen with the computer with the screen. IETF 99.
Yeah.
Thing.
So look for IETF 99.
When there are multiple choices for that single Southern turn server in the
Okay, those who finished reading, reactions. It looked okay to me. Krista gives thumbs up.
Jonathan, I mean, I'm just wondering why. I mean, one thing I'm wondering is the dropping of the last sentence, saying turns should be authenticated to long-term credential. Maybe that's more normative behavior of turn, not normative behavior of ICE. So I shouldn't be specifying it. I feel like that's different than the most of the thrust of it, which is only use one turn server.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think on retrospect, I agree with that. People should make sure that they've thought about both things.
So
So this text seems to substantially change the behavior in ways we don't want, right? Like if you learned multiple ones through DNS rec, I mean, it removes all the stuff about if you get several DNS results back, how you should handle it.
I think that's please input expression.
But what we want in the draft is advice to implementers so they don't screw this up. It's not that any implementer can do a random thing and it's all fine. So if I return a DNS address that has 150 records for different geo-regions of the world, and I get 150 candidates sent to me, from some other side, from an implementation that didn't follow this advice we're removing, I'm going to be really sad. So I think that text with those shoulds are necessary parts of the protocol and should not be removed.
However, these should lead to a single turn server, which we moved away from. We will now allow multiple turn servers.
Yeah, but each one of those turn servers has multiple IP addresses, and you still don't want to return a different candidate for every single IP address that they have.
Yeah, I guess the point is that even if you won't use multiple turn servers as such, you still want to make the same set of choices, both in terms of the names and the IP addresses, for every candidate and every checklist, if you see what I mean. Basically, don't say, okay, yes, I can use the turn server over here and the turn server over there. But if the turn server over there has 5 IP addresses, I want to make the same choice for every binding I make on that turn server. So maybe this section needs to be clarified.
That's basically the URLs. Niels Omeyer. So reality is, at least from WebRTC, is that people tend to put in like a whole list of turn servers. Typically, people who don't know what they're doing, they basically will provide like 15 turn servers, and then they think that makes net traversal better than if they provide only a single turn server. So there's definitely room for improvement here, and I mean, like on the other hand, like WebRTC clearly allows you to provide more than one turn server or more than one stun server. But yeah, I agree with Colin that on the other hand, like we have put in some warnings, basically saying like providing more than 10 turn servers is probably not going to help you. I mean, like if you can't reach like the first 3, it's like it doesn't help you, right? So I think it's the limitation for a single one should go, but I guess there should be then some advice on like, okay, there should be some upper threshold or whatever.
But the problem is sometimes the first 5 or 10 would not be the PC candidate.
Yeah, so, Jonathan, I mean, I guess maybe what we should say is only use multiples of these if you have some meaningful reason to believe they have different network characteristics. If you see what I mean. Like, if you believe they're in, different, like one's in your DMZ and one's on the public network, or, one is TCP and one is UDP or whatever. And then the other thing we still want to say is once you've picked a turn server, make the same, once you've picked a set of turn servers, use that same set of turn servers across all your checklists. Don't make different choices for different checklists. And, when you do SRV and DNS resolution, the SRV&A resolution, pick the same actual IP address across all of them. Don't spread them across multiple, don't spread them across the DNS load.
Okay, so
Now, how to say that text, I don't know.
I was about to ask you to update the PR, but yeah, if you can formulate something along those lines, that would be very helpful. Can I?
Well, I can't do it while I'm paying attention.
Sorry?
I can't do it while I'm paying attention here in the room.
Yeah, I mean, I really hope to be able to end this session before 2 hours has gone, but it doesn't look very promising right now. But if we manage to do that, yes, you'll have a time after the session.
Colin here. Just one thing I was going to mention on my belief of why people on WebRTC are putting in these 20, a list of 20 or whatever, is they don't really own 20 or have credentials to use the 20 per se. They're run by other people, and they're basically using other people's bandwidth, and often those get turned off. So they just keep adding more that's on and off. So it might be that really, this is probably outside of the ICE spec, but maybe WebRTC spec, that it's like, look, if you have a list of 20, like try and see which ones seem to be valid and up and that you have valid credentials to authenticate with, and then throw out any that don't meet that requirement before you even pass the list into the ICE subsystem. And that might actually reduce out some of the problems that people are seeing.
Niels, but that's only going to solve your turn server problem with stun. You don't have any credentials in there. People do the same thing. They provide like 20 stun servers, and they think it's like going to make the world better.
Because they don't want to pay for any, and they find
Yeah. I mean, there are like famous lists on GitHub with like free stun servers, right? And people basically take the whole list and dump it into their like JavaScript application, expect wonders.
Really, we should send PRs. So let's.
Okay, but is this something we want to have in the ICE spec, or leave it out? So that kind of recommendation. It sounds like a WebRTC.
Look, I think it's mostly out, but what I'm saying is that the thing that's causing us, there's something happening in the real world due to implementers that is causing us grief here.
Mm-hmm.
And so we might want to try and put some text in that tries to reduce that grief. Maybe that's not possible. Maybe this is the wrong spec. Whatever, I don't care. My real issue is that I think we can't remove this because a bunch of the normative behavior, nothing to do with the list of turn servers, just to do with the list of IP addresses for a single DNS thing, we still need advice about.
So just to clarify what Cullen and Jonathan said before, so a lot of people put URLs, and some of them have the same characteristics. I don't know if any document outside is going to say like you have 20 URLs, they're different, apart from looking at them and saying they're different. But if some provide a turn TCP candidate or run over 443, in some situations they would basically be better if you can't find a UDP route out of it. And so definitely need more text here for solving those kind of situations.
And I suggest you can take a PR of that.
Oh, nice try.
I'll take that as a yes. No?
Niels, question to Colin. Like, I mean, the first sentence of that paragraph we're looking at right now reads to me as if this specification says you can only use one single stun and or turn server ever. And I think that one, I agree, should go.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I guess we should be. No, it was already in the change that the single will go.
No, but that part is something that we agree on.
Okay.
For the first sentence, we agree on that limitation should go, but like for the rest, we still need more clarification, or better wording, or that's my understanding.
Okay. And next one. The criterion for selecting type and local preference values. There was a whole bunch of text about VPN interfaces. and when to use one, etc. That was substantially reduced.
Is that just because dual stack fairness covers it? Jonathan, is that just because dual stack fairness covers that now? Because if that's all been superseded by dual stack fairness, then we can remove this
That's a good
with a
point.
reference.
That would probably solve the issue.
What would you make sure?
Yes. Okay. And I guess that's a general question. Yeah, the ice spec, yeah, it is too long. Whatever we can do shorten makes a lot of sense, but it's partially long because there is helpful, in quotes, informative text when you would use a VPN and such. I guess this is about where do we want to put the balance.
Colin, I have no idea. I can live with this either way, but I mean, someone. Previous ISGs, I don't know about the current one, would have said you effectively have a should here that tells you which value you should use with no advice or reasons about why you might use a different, like we're deleting all the advice that covers why it's a should and why we leave flexibility to people and how they might choose.
Oh.
Really, I can live with deleting all that device. But
yeah, actually, I mean, that what we just wrote there, dual stack fairness, is referenced here, so maybe that's already covered. So I would originally, because to me it seems like, okay, it's kind of useful text, maybe you want to keep it, but let's check with dual stack fairness. I think we're pretty good with that.
I don't think fairness explains why those values are like that. I think it explains how you deal with the V4, V6 specific instance, not why you might make a VPN candidate lower than a non-VPN candidate and vice versa. So it comes to the question of, do you think people need to understand why they should set these numbers that way, or do you think they will, should always just do them exactly like that, in which case we can change the should to a must. But if you're going to leave it as a should, maybe you should have some advice there about how you change the numbers. And I don't think it's a dual stack fairness.
So Ben, any advice, general guidance here from an AD/IESG point of view, just to try to set a precedent as well for some of the subsequent ones?
This has been same as before, right? I mean, if we're going to say should on something like this, you're going to get the why is there not a must question. That doesn't necessarily mean you need the 10 sentences or whatever over here, unless you think you do. But it's helpful to have something that describes what sort of variation from that should is being contemplated.
I just have I don't, so you should go after me. So yeah, I mean, the other thing I want to say is the existing text, I think, does not take dual stack fairness into account. And, it would need to be changed regardless, because dual stack fairness changes those recommendations. So.
In trying to deal with objections we might get and still make this easy and be quick and easy to edit, my suggestion would be we keep roughly the green text we have, including a reference to dual stack fairness that is normative. And at the same time, we take all the other text and we stuff it into an appendix and we put a little note here. Other considerations for thinking about setting these numbers can be found in an appendix of foo, and we never have to read the appendix again, and people won't get confused with it when they're reading the real thing.
I like that. I'm thinking about deleted explanatory text as an appendix for a lot of drafts might be a good precedent.
Okay, that sounds like something we agree on. So let's do that and move on. So yes, we move the explanatory text to appendix. Keep only the minimal. That was part of the change.
And reference that.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, and reference the appendix. I guess the same should apply here.
Yeah, probably.
So lots of helpful text, but maybe appendix material. Okay. Any more comments on this one?
More appendicitis, I think.
Yeah, same thing.
Yeah, it's the same appendix.
Okay. Let's see. So here it's just removing perhaps redundant details of the terminology part.
I mean, I was about to put a comment in, but I think all these are good. I think they're A, editorial, and B, help.
Sorry, Jonathan?
You can use some words, but I'm not going to do that tonight.
Okay. But in general, it's improving. Oh, that's actually true. Huh. Okay. Let's say looks good. Oh. Okay. Then we move on. So the yes, so here's the longer text.
Really, IP addresses.
Sorry?
I think clearly IP address in the new text is wrong. I think he means address family. And I think don't we have NAT64 recommendations now also?
Good question. I don't know if we have NAT64.
I thought well, we discussed having NAT64 recommendations.
I vaguely remember that.
Did it ever get in?
Let's make a note of that. Okay, any other comments or? I see Colin very focused. I assume he's reading the diff.
I know that it comes up. I can't just off. The old text is off, the new text is off. Looks good. I think it's fun.
Okay. So for the notes, it's okay. Okay, so here it's equivalent punch order. I like that. Okay. Jonathan gave thumbs up for number 8. Colin, thumbs up. I see no thumbs down. Going first, going second. Approved. Okay, I just removed redundant part and made it shorter. Sounds good. So, thumbs up from Jonathan.
So the original text had the little clause, unless the sending agent detects that the candidate pair does not work. That seemed to be at the essence one of the things we were arguing about earlier. I think we still sort of need that text. Let me rephrase that. I have no idea if we need that text or not. I think that that is a non-editorial change, but an actual significant change.
Chris, I probably needed text, but I wonder whether we need it there. I mean, if we're going to talk about this renomination and stuff like that, maybe we should have a separate section for that, and there we can describe why one would do this, and there we can talk about, you know, that candidates no longer work, to have it in one place, because I think. Or they should at least be in the media handling section, because this is really media handling. So I don't think it should be here. This talks about how you do nomination. Or then we need to put everything here, but I think it would be good to have it in one place.
Okay, I guess you will be able to do such a PR in a very short time.
Well, Jonathan Lennox, I mean, I think this is a bigger, I don't think this is actually very well specified anywhere, what you do if you get a nomination on a pair that doesn't work. That's, what?
How do we get to that situation? Like right at the nomination point? Like,
I mean, you'd have to, I mean, somehow, I mean, I get, it would have to be your peer is doing aggressive nomination and you have one-way connectivity. That's the only way it could happen.
But I think this text talks about the fact that it
Yeah.
will happen later.
Yeah. No, I
yeah, that's the other one, which like this is not very clear whether this is like at the point of nomination or if this is like I'm sending.
Yeah, right. Yeah, this, yeah. This, I agree. This totally isn't clear if that clause applies to set it now or set it later. That's very much not clear at all either. So I think, yeah, this probably should be media handling. And I mean, yeah, I mean, sort of your peer is doing aggressive nomination, your check failed case.
I guess we don't have aggressive anymore.
Well, like, except that you're still talking to, you could still be talking to 5245.
Okay, for legacy devices. But even those won't use aggressive because you have the ICE2 option. You disable the aggressive with that. So you don't have
In
aggressive.
theory.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, for those that violate the spec, maybe we don't have to be that specific.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess, I guess the theory is that you'll never get a nomination for something where you don't have bidirectional connectivity. I mean, nonetheless, I have seen things where. Sorry, go ahead.
So I mean, I agree with what Chris was saying. This would be better somewhere else in the spec. And if Taylor was here, he may say, I only removed this because it's duplicated somewhere else in the spec, so it's fine, right? So this change may be fine. But this case does happen on a regular basis where you have a firewall that allows stun through but blocks RTP. That's, I mean, there's other cases that can happen too, but it's going to continue to happen with things that are doing everything new.
Okay, so you're saying we should have some normative text on this in the media handling, and that should cover it.
Somewhere in the spec we should deal with this, and we may in fact already deal with it.
Okay.
And I'm just not seeing it, but
And
somewhere it should.
And in this particular part, we can remove those details because they're going to be discussed elsewhere.
Just to be precise, what you just said, Colin, basically means that you would nominate this because done works, and then we do it in the media handling section, basically. If you discover at any point during media handling that the pair is not working anymore, then do X.
Yeah.
Okay.
That one made me.
Okay,
You agree? Yeah. Yeah.
so
I mean, kind of. You agree? No.
Again, this is related to what we talked about the renomination, because even if we would keep the existing text, okay, so what does this what happens if this happens? Because there it doesn't describe here. It said should be used for media unless that the pair doesn't work. Okay, so the pair doesn't work. What do I do then? So we still need to have that text, but I think that text shouldn't be here. It should be either we have in the media as has been suggested, or in a renomination. It's difficult here. You need to look at a draft and see where it fits, but the text should be somewhere. But as far as this change is concerned, I'm okay with it. I think it's
okay. So did I read the consensus correctly? So we'll merge this proposal, but we make sure the text covering this case is elsewhere.
Given this is one of the things that probably lots of implementations do, and I don't think the Chrome implementation actually does, like, I'm okay with merging this as long as it gets put somewhere else. But what I don't want to have happen is this gets removed, and then people decide not to add anything else later. Like, this text needs, I mean, what you said, yeah, for sure. But if that translates to we don't add any text anywhere else later, then no, I don't think it should be merged.
And we already agreed that we're going to study this renominations.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay, and let's hope we have a short slot at the end of the session to you guys get together and bash some text on the renomination, which we could be merging in a week or so, spec, so that this doesn't keep tracking us. Okay. We're almost halfway through. So here's text that apparently is equivalent. Yes, it looks okay to me. It changes the terminology that it's using from use candidate to nominated flag, but they are essentially the same.
I'm going to repeat Colin's comment from previously. I gave this back to the old text is off, the new text is off.
Including continuing on with those fits me. Yes, exactly.
Okay, so but of course we should only. Yes. So of course we should have a bit of the bar that putting changes that only improve at least with a big margin. Even I mean it's not going to be perfect, but it should be improving at least marginally, because there's always a risk that we screw up.
Yeah, I think it's much faster. I mean, the old text, it's like the response to the question, result of the trigger check is the response to the question, something is that or that. And I get 4 levels deep in recursion there, and I totally can't follow what's going on.
Niels Omeyer, when does the controlled agent set the nominated flag? I thought that's the controlling agent.
No, the flag is not the.
Oh, the flag on the pair?
The flag on the pair is set when you receive a.
Okay, not the.
Yeah.
On the wire.
Basically, so the idea is that you have to, in order for something to have the nominated flag for the controlled agent, you have to receive the use candidate and successfully completed a check on that pair.
Okay.
So I think that's what this is saying. Yeah, flag is, it is selected pair, or not, or whatever you call it.
Okay, so I think we're gonna merge this change. So here, bit of text about third-party call control was removed. Should be number 11.
Seems like one. Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That doesn't change whether.
Krista, I'm okay with this change, but I have a feeling that this is something, for example, where ISG could ask, could you give a example of such? So maybe we could say in certain usages and then e.g. third-party control or something like that.
E.g. PSP scooter. That's like my real world number one use case. Seriously.
Yeah.
For sure.
But this is just a thing and
Well, I would like basically whatever is controlling ICE basically like tells both to be the same role.
yeah.
Yeah, well, whatever, but
Hmm.
just with from previous ISG reviews, normally when you have something like this, the reviewer may ask for an example.
This is just a preface to actual content. Yeah.
Mhm.
Not really worth.
Well, other than that, that's a requirement of these.
Yeah, definitely. That'll be a substantive information.
So merge with one change, putting this one example there shortly. Okay, I see nodding. Thank you. Oh yeah, this was the bigger one. Still editorial, but it's let's say a lot of text. I'm not going to be giving it on the screen for you to read. Who had time to read this before the meeting? The whole. This is the number 12.
Everything below your code.
Yeah, the one which I marked needs to take offline. I mentioned about this in the email, that you may want to read this before the session. So who had a chance?
I read it, I didn't understand it. My fault. Yes.
So I had to read it a couple of times. I think it was okay, but considering our discussion the previous things I thought were okay, I'd love to have someone else have a look at it too. So for this, what I would suggest we take it later, but get a volunteer or two to have a look at it. It's going to take like 5 minutes, and I have to read it a couple of times. So who would volunteer to read this and make a comment? Okay, Krista will do it. Jonathan, thank you.
Is there a way to add people?
Sorry?
Is there a way to add people and get something there?
Just in the comment ads.
There is. What's your GitHub ID?
I think it's just Jonathan Lennox.
But you're not in the repo yet.
Oh.
Anyway.
I just worked for you, though.
Yeah, you're not a committer yet. So anyway, maybe for next round we'll do that. Sorry?
Oh, no, it's every hour there.
So is that the one?
That was like me.
Okay, so it takes a while. Okay, so okay, so let's go forward. So here, again, looks like a big change, but say redundant text that maybe was not needed. Number 13 in the pull request.
So I was just looking back at the previous one. I do not think it's editorial. I don't think it's wrong changes necessarily, but I think it changes the way you select the IP addresses. So I don't. It might be worth pulling that out in a PR itself and trying to break it into some bite-sized chunks or something like that. But it seems to be. I think the old text and the new text would, in many cases, in at least some cases, result in different traffic over the wire.
Okay, thanks. And back to number 13. Any comments here?
Is this the nomination? What's nomination?
Good question.
Talks about free candidate and stuff.
So I'm confused about the new text because it says something about the after all media streams using that candidate pair are completed. So is that meant to say the ICE is completed, or like the whole stream is like gone? Like I'm tearing down the ICE session with that pair.
Which part then?
Like it says like a full agent should not stop sending checks and responses from a candidate until 3 seconds after all media streams using that candidate are completed. Is that the reference to one of the ICE states, or is that like, does it mean 3 seconds after my application on top of it has stopped using it? I didn't have time to read it.
So I think this might be a little bit confusion too between how WebRTC uses ICE and how other things might use ICE. So in WebRTC, the consent checks would keep going until 3 seconds after all media had stopped using it, right, to your question. Yeah. But I think the ICE spec in other uses of it, where you're just going to use ICE to set this up and you're not doing consent checks, then it would be once you've got it set up, you stop, when ICE is completed, not when the media is completed. So my guess here is this text is, though matches WebRTC implementations of ICE, is wrong for the ICE spec.
Kirstel, I think the text is confusing because it talks about all media streams using that candidate. One candidate is normally used only by one media stream unless you're bundling, but so I think that. Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Okay. Yeah. ICE media stream. Yeah. So I think this text is a little confusing. Maybe he meant something else. Maybe he meant. There is no ICE. There is no pair state called completed, right? So he's probably talking about the I state here, right? But yeah. So. And I guess this 3 seconds has something to do with if there is some media on the wire that you can do something about that. But I think that it's confusing. It needs to be more clear what he's talking about.
Jonathan, yeah, part of the 3 seconds was to handle the aggressive. Part of it was just to make sure that other checks get responded to rather than having to wait for them to time out. But yeah, I think the all media streams, unless you're you're doing something clever like reusing candidates across, ICE sessions, that's fine. But that's your problem. Yeah, I think the all media streams there is confusing. But other than that, I think until the checklist, until the state of the, I think it's, I guess, the old text.
Yeah, the old text was more clear on the.
Yeah, I think I guess the question is it when the session goes to completed or when the checklist goes to completed? That's because that's also unclear.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay. So should we keep the old text?
Um,
Another try on
No.
the shorter.
yeah, I think. Try to completely say for all peers for media streams using these candidates. Oh, I think it's trying to handle forking here also.
Ooh. Yeah, that's probably what's very easily missing here.
Yes.
So safer to keep the old text?
Maybe. I know, is there something wrong with the old text, or was it just wordy?
Just wordy.
Okay.
As-
Probably
as
safer
for-
to keep the old text, but also need to worry about forking definitely.
Sorry, need to worry about
But
forking.
you need to fix because the existing text had the same issue I brought up. It talks about all media stream using candidates, so it needs to be fixed anyway.
What view is this on your
Or is this the previous?
It's the same issue.
Ah, how do I get this view?
It was the pull request 38 and hit the split view.
Oh, it's not that's changed.
Yes, I think. I think the old text is also has confusing bits and pieces in it, so I would think we should try to find a better text. Because as Jonathan pointed out, the completed there is also not like super clear.
Okay. So Krister, will you take a stab at this? Okay, shall we move to the next one? Colin looks slightly concerned.
I'm just lost in where we are now.
Okay. So if you look for one of the keywords in the comments you see on the screen, you should be able to find them.
That's what I'm doing. Does your browser show you like the home location of that thing you are? No, I'm taking the wrong browser. Yes, you are.
So as you can see in the screen, the
But it says 13.
previously validated pair part was removed from the ICE restarts because it seems redundant.
Browser's better. We'll just serve a purpose.
Jonathan, I mean, I think using the preview, I mean, the previously validated pair, I agree, is a little bit, but I mean, I think using the previous session,
So you would rather use previous session.
yeah, than previous selected pair. Though this is also confusing here because we have ICE session and we have media session, which is a little unfortunate.
Did I capture right? What do you mean? So previous session is a previously validated pair. This doesn't. No, that doesn't actually work.
Why? Except using a previous.
Media can continue to be sent to the previously validated pair. Okay, using previously.
Using the previous sessions.
Okay, yeah.
Now the tricky thing here, of course, is that it's distinguishing previous session versus a new media session, which might be a terminology issue. Are we distinguishing ICE session from media session?
I would have to check.
Because we definitely need to make sure we definitely need a word for, the entire, sequence of ICE sessions, which I think is what he's using media session here for. It's a little unfortunate if it's both session, but
I would guess I mean, we work quite hard to get these things explicitly defined that we're
Okay.
not, but we would have to check it.
yeah, we need to make sure we have a word for that and make sure that this is using the right word for it.
Yes, Chris, I remember we had a discussion about this at some point because we wanted to have, it may need a little more, because I think using previous sessions is confusing. If you talk about the previous ICE session, it should be using the characteristics of the previous ICE session or something. No, say, especially since the text talks about both ICE session and media session. So when you say previous session, what do you mean? Do you mean the media session, the ICE session? So maybe this needs a little. This may be one of those things that we do need to clarify it, but the way he has suggested is not clear enough.
Okay. So is that now captured there? So using previous session instead of using previous validated pair, and we make sure that those different kind of sessions are explicit. Okay. Number 15, again, details removed. Okay, third-party call control. And there's a change. Yeah, so ICE restarts.
I think this is a little more than editorial, maybe, because I don't really understand. He says, may do what would the other way be of doing this?
Yeah, so.
I mean, if you want to determine the roles, redetermine Yeah, so I think, yeah.
So John, I think that what it's trying to get, what both of us are trying to get across, which I don't think we quite have the right word for, is, you know, the only way the only way you can do this is this. You cannot do this other than by doing an ICE restart. So, I mean, that's why the if you want to, you must. You know, I mean, I agree it's a little bit of a weird formulation, but I'm not sure if there's a better formulation for, you know, saying, saying I mean, maybe you may do it by this, you must not do it other than by doing this.
So you say the only way to do this is X.
Yeah.
And then to do this when you must.
Yeah.
You don't have to say that.
But when you are doing this, you must.
Yeah.
Krista, we can say the following actions or use cases, whatever requires an ICE restart, and then we say that, I mean, we don't need to add a must or may for each of them. We have it in the beginning, and then we just list the case.
Niels, the other thing which I don't like about the new text is like if an agent want to change its implementation level, I have no idea what implementation level means.
Full versus light.
Okay.
That's defined somewhere.
Okay.
I think to match the meaning of the old text, we need to change the mays in the new text to must, but I don't think we need any change other than that. Chris, are you on board with that?
There's no. Oh, this one.
It must restart ICE to do so. Yeah.
Okay, changing the maze to musts. Does that sound like a good solution, Jonathan?
Yeah.
Okay, any other comments on this? Moving forward. Number 16, again, details. Oh,
So I just checked for the implementation level. So the latest this draft, that's the only location of the implementation level.
really?
Yeah, it's already defined. You need to define it.
Okay, but ice light is still in the latest, right?
Yes, like
Okay.
that these two words together, implementation level, only occur in this one sentence.
Okay.
Nowhere else. Let's get rid of here too.
Well, yeah, maybe we can then,
Yeah, we just.
yeah, make it explicit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful in line, yes.
Yes. Where was it? Here. Okay. So again, Peter thinks it's equivalent. I think so too. Sorry?
So basically, you remove redundant text, otherwise it's. Jonathan, I think if Peter is correct that that is indeed that this is indeed a redundant definition of selected pair, then yes, except that there's a verb missing in the second sentence. In the case of local relayed candidate, media is forwarded.
Okay, otherwise looks good. Krister, Colin, Niels. Okay.
I'm still iffy on this one. It just seems like a lot of. I'll think about it more, but
Okay.
it's not obvious to me at all why it's equivalent.
Okay. Can we get a deadline? Will you get maybe we'll get back on this, like in a week or today? Okay.
Reminders not better applications.
Oh yeah. So I guess what we'll do probably we'll make a version anyway this week, and then we can file comments on that.
We can do that, Chris. We can do that, Peter. But one thing to remember also is that you can't just do a merge, because I think he has done the PR based on not the latest version. So there are some merge conflicts that we will need to take care of. So, but of course, if Peter can do it, fine. But
Actually, this PR should be against the master. I mean, it should be automatically updated, so it should be mergeable. There's no conflicts at the moment.
It does show conflicts.
Oh, it does show. Oh, okay. Then it wasn't earlier. It was mergeable. Okay. Okay. Well, here Peter apparently put the details back, so that was after my comment. That seems to be now equivalent to the older one, so we can skip that. Number 18. So here we had some text about RTP related things, and I tend to agree. Maybe in the ICE base spec, we shouldn't have too much RTP related things because those are better handled in the ICE STP draft. So this is about the jitter control.
John Flax. I mean, I think that I agree. Maybe you don't want ICE RTP specific stuff explicitly, but I think you might need something like sort of a more generic, any, whatever protocol you're running over this needs to reconsider its, like your transport level. So like obviously your congestion control and jitter adaptation, things like that, because SCTP should needs to redo its congestion control, and whatever protocol you're doing over here, it's a new network path. You should reset any network path adaptations you're using, if that follows.
So would you suggest something shorter text than what was the previous one? Like a few sentences that okay, take care of these things, or what do you recommend?
Sorry, are you asking me to write something at the mic?
No. I'm asking, like, do you think we should keep the text? Or?
No, I think we should have a shorter text, that sort of generically talks about, characteristics of your network. No?
Look, unless we really need this advice is very important to people that are implementing the overall system. Yes, it's unfortunate it's in this spec, but unless there's another spec we can reference from this one, it needs to stay in this spec. Right, ICE was developed and is primarily used for RTP, and this is a very complicated part of how ICE screws up RTP, and you need to interact with the two. So I think it's quite reasonable for this document to talk about how ICE works with RTP, particularly when it means you have to do something different with RTP than you'd normally do if you weren't using ICE. I don't care if it's in Penix or not,
So,
it's not, but
my recommendation would be the ICE STP, because that one has a lot of RTP details already, and we reference it here.
say which one again?
The ICE STP.
This has nothing to do with SCTP. This is about media handling.
Fair enough.
I mean, maybe it should be in the RTP spec. I'd be willing to take that, but I mean, it just like the RTP spec, whatever that is. I don't know. That's why it's here. All right.
Okay, so you would recommend to keep the whole text?
I mean, maybe somebody can rephrase it a little bit, but I think that all the advice that is given in that text, every piece of it is needed.
Okay, then
There
the
may be an
easiest one is
easier
just
way
to
to
keep it.
Yeah.
This is Ben. I heard someone say appendix. There's normative text here. Please don't move normative text to an appendix.
This one is not normative. Oh, barely normative.
It's kind of normative.
Yeah.
Well, then it shouldn't be capitalized.
Exactly. It
Yeah,
should
okay.
be capitalized.
I mean, really, this text should have more normative text, should have more capitalized words in it, not like, this is stuff that you really need to get right if you want to do a good implementation. So, I mean,
Okay, so and if we add more normativeness there, we shouldn't put it in appendix. So what I'm reading here is that we're gonna actually keep this here. And Karen, will you recommend what should be stronger language? Or are you okay with the current one?
I'm fine with the current one, but I'm one of these people who believes that if I write text like, it's super important that you set the X bit to Y, and the protocol will totally fail if you don't set it to Y, that is normative text, and it does not require the word must in caps for things to be normative text. So I'm fine with this as it is, but many
Okay.
people seem to feel that if the word must isn't there, it's not normative.
So I'm on the fence on this paragraph, partly because whatever at the top of the paragraph is something that each RTP system needs to cater for that, irrespective of wise. So, and the second bit, which is about the marker bit, I think some of the text already exists in RFC 3550 about the Talkspurt. So the question is this guidance really needed in ICE for it?
If you have a reference, we're more than happy to use that.
Well, it does say 3550 recommends the marker bit to be set because of Talkspurt, and I think
Okay.
that
So
part
that
of the
covers
text
it.
that is probably already in 3550. And the first part, which says that if paths change, the jitter buffer will need to be adapted, is something that every 3550 implementation kind of takes care of.
Okay. Okay, let's try to keep it on. Let's try to keep the discussion on the microphone so we have it recorded.
So what I'm saying is that the first paragraph, which talks about the fact that the jitter buffer would need to be adapted because the ICE candidate or pairs might change, is kind of trivial. Like systems do that automatically, they adapt.
Okay, I guess the easiest way for us here is we just keep this. Would that make sense? And unless someone feels some words should be changed, let's just keep it as such. I see nodding. Okay, excellent. We'll do that. Yeah. Okay, 19. Oh, yes, yeah. Excellent. So number 20. RTP details. So we'll keep this. And the last one. May to must not. That's maybe. Sounds reasonable change.
Jonathan, I mean, it sounds reasonable, except that elsewhere it says you don't change roles on a restart regardless. So we were looking at that in the previous thing on the ICE restart.
Okay.
So now, of course, probably he's worried here about the third-party call control case where where the restart is actually pointing at an entirely new entity which has no idea what the previous tiebreaker was. So I don't know what to do about this.
Well, I think maybe we should ask whether there was a real reason motivating this change. It's definitely not an editorial change, and it definitely does not work with old versions of ICE. I mean, I don't think we can really do this, because if some old version of ICE changes it on you and you're like, whoa, I'm going to throw you out now because you changed something that says must not, it's not really compatible.
Okay, so it's not just alignment, it is actually a change. That's where,
The comment he says is like someone else is different.
yeah.
Oh, that he's trying to clarify it for the document. Fair enough.
Can we find out the part of the document?
That's going to be painful here on the screen. If you find it on your laptop, go ahead.
It says in section 6251.
No, I think the other section says you must not change your tiebreaker value after you've lost a tie, or after you've won a tie. But it says must not. So I think that's not the same thing as must not change on a restart.
Okay, so we should not make the change.
We should not make the change.
In fact, going back to actually 5245, it says an ICE restart causes a new selections of roles and tiebreakers. Like very, very simple. It's one of the few clear statements in the whole spec.
Okay.
We should fix that.
I think the default.
Chris, I thought we said earlier when we saw what the difference between an ICE restart and a new media stream was, that we said that the roles don't change during an ICE restart.
Yeah, but I think what that's saying is that the roles at the start of the restart, if you will, but there still might be, but your peer still might have gotten confused, and so you still need to do the tiebreaker mechanism. I think what this is really saying is, it's less clear because we've done the separation from SDP, but the controlling role is based on who the original offerer was, not who the current offerer is. I think that's all. I think that's what that's trying to say. So basically, so your default assumption is if I was controlling before, I'm still controlling, but you still have to do the tiebreaker if the other guy thinks he's controlling anyway, because it might be 3PCC or something. Who knows?
Okay.
I'm doing exegesis here, not actually in the text. So.
Okay, so for this particular change, we are not going to do it. Right, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and let's double check that it is actually aligned. But this seems to be something we shouldn't be doing.
The edit you suggest is the description of the stun extensions.
Okay, so that was last one of the ones that I flagged in the PR. There's plenty of more if you're interested in going through, but they are maybe less substantial.
So since we have 10 minutes, let me throw a bomb, which is StunBIS. Do we want to use it? Have we discussed that before, or do we come to consensus on it? I mean, the main difference is SHA-256 rather than SHA-1 for our purposes.
Good question. I don't remember being that being discussed.
SHA-256 rather than SHA-1 for the authentication.
Oh.
But that sounds like a kind of important change.
It does. Yeah, and the backup compatibility is fun.
How do you signal the support for
Well, ICE would have to define that.
I don't see how we could ask the ISG to approve a document that didn't have crypto agility to SHA-256 at this point in time. I mean, Fleming, you know more about this than me, but you same page. Like, okay, my first reaction was like, I never want all of our stuff to always have to upgrade to the latest version of everything. If we don't need it, we don't use it. But on this one, it seems unfortunately, ISG is going to punt it back to us if we don't do it. Would be sort of my guess.
Yeah, I kind of have the same feeling. Ben, it's late in the game, but I guess something we have to do. And well, those familiar with it, would it be how substantial text change?
Why don't we ask the SEC AD?
Yes, that's the SEC AD.
Okay. Yeah.
But I agree with Cullen that it's hard to get something through without agility there. If for some reason people decide not to, make sure the security considerations at least mention the decision and why.
Yeah, and I guess SHA-1 starts to be pretty broken.
I mean, not for HVAC. That's what we're using it for.
Okay.
So we've had drafts get through that would say, yeah, we're using SHA-1, but we're using it in this kind of okay way, and it's too much trouble to change right now. We'll change sometime in the future, and that's okay as long as it's clear and the security considerations. Maybe, of course, it'd be even better to be agile.
Okay, I have a better suggestion then. Ask the security AD and have him write a paragraph of text for the security section.
Excellent idea. Thank you, Colin. Okay. Christer, can you take an action on that? Yeah, we'll write in the notes. Niels, did we capture that in the notes? Yes. Yeah. Okay. Any other bombs anyone wants to throw? I mean, this is really the last moment. I hope we won't be needing many more, well, any more sessions on ISPs face-to-face. This going to be public as a request done by Singapore.
Even more painful.
So an issue was raised a long time ago was, does the new timing work with something doing the old? Like, does something doing this new thing actually interop reasonably well with something doing the old thing? And have we convinced ourselves that's true? I think is the real question.
Yeah, I mean that's been our goal, and best of my knowledge, I haven't seen changes that at least in my head broke it, but no, I haven't implemented a new one. So Neil's looking forward to it.
Yeah, I haven't implemented it yet either.
So
Singapore, I should
that is one option.
That's not a bad idea. So I'm not raising an issue here, but I am concerned about the timing changing, how the ordering and timing changes, and whether that will actually allow it to find connectivity in a bunch of use cases. I've not gone what Dan York did long ago of worked through the exact flows to figure out if there's a problem or not. But I'm not volunteering to go do that, but I sure wish somebody had.
But can you please raise that on the mailing list? Just run an email describing the issue, that someone who's maybe implementing this could have a look at it.
Okay.
Thank you, Colin. Okay, anything else? And I think I promised, yeah, we may be able to end early. Yes, we did, almost 5 minutes to go. And Jonathan, now you have the 5 minutes to figure out the one piece of text you said you would do. Okay.
Can I just give a comment?
And anyone, those who are interested in this, can we do re-nomination or not? Bernard started a discussion on the mailing list, so please participate.
Okay, so with that, thank you everyone, and I hope we don't have to see on this topic in Singapore. But see you later.
So you just say that I hope we don't see each other in this forum.
I am for some reason not seeing whatever comment you made. Do I have to do something remotely? I don't see my name mentioned in the comment.
Now it's submitted.
What?
Now it's there.
Okay.
I'll be right back.
Everybody sign blue sheets. Yes, blue sheets, blue sheets.
You can actually remember finding one.
Sign the blue sheets.
Yeah, if you update the SHA with Cobalt, then you basically need to run your reactions both.
No, you negotiate in the signaling whether you support it or not.
So where do you?
You put an ice out, you're saying, hey, I you got these.
Okay, but that's like, I mean, that requires like a few spec, right?
Isn't that in the step?
Here you do, because some spec says, you do bubble unless you have some other knowledge that about what your sports.
Right, but you both, you
Yeah.
include two attributes.
So you include, yeah, you include both, that's